Good evening, you're watching London Live News at 6 with HELENAWADIA. Coming up tonight, a man has appeared in court charged with the murders of 4 family members who were stabbed in Bermondsey on Monday. The fallout continues after a Conservative Party MP is alleged to have watched pornography in the House of Commons chamber. We'll have the latest reaction. We'll also take a look at London's weather in the next 10 minutes, plus a new initiative using football to help young people open up about mental health. We'll be speaking to those involved in the Premier League Kicks programme. And from singing on the streets of London to performing at Wembley Arena, we'll be speaking to the frontman of ska band The Jewelers on his rise from zero to hero. First tonight, though, a man has appeared in court charged with the murders of 4 family members who were stabbed in Bermondsey. Scotland Yard confirmed this morning that a 28-year-old man had been charged. Anthony Baxter reports.
Homicide detectives from the Met Specialist Crime Command, who are leading this investigation, released details this morning of the man charged over the attack, which took place in the early hours of Monday morning. Armed officers were called to a terraced house on Delaford Road in southeast London after reports of a disturbance. The man charged is 28-year-old Joshua Jacks from Minard Road in Hither Green. He's accused of killing 64-year-old Dolly Hill, her partner Denton Burke, and Ms. Hill's daughter and granddaughter, Tanisha and Samantha, who were 45 and 27. Mr. Jacks appeared at Westminster Magistrates this afternoon, where he spoke only to confirm his name, date of birth and address. He was remanded in custody and will next appear at the Old Bailey on Tuesday.
That was Anthony Baxter reporting on those stabbings in Bermondsey. Now, a Conservative Party MP who allegedly watched pornography in the House of Commons chamber could face an independent investigation. The party's chief whip called for the case to be referred to the Parliament's independent complaint scheme, which could lead to the MP being suspended if the complaint is upheld. Well, Defence Secretary Ben Wallace was asked earlier today if he was shocked at the allegations.
Does it shock me? Look, I'm afraid I've done, nearly 15, 17 years in the House of Commons. We've seen over the years everything from, my old office in the House of Commons used to be John Prescott's office, where they had that legendary Christmas party with John Prescott when he was Deputy Prime Minister. I've seen things over decades that I'm afraid no longer shocks me, but I think it shows the problem in the House of Commons is ultimately the overall culture of long hours, bars, and people sometimes under pressure. And after all of that, that can create a toxic mix that leads to all sorts of things. I mean, this is not a unique problem.
Well, Ben Wallace today reiterated that he thought Parliament was a safe place for female MPs, while Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said the Conservative Party should take action now against the MP, stating a culture change has to be led from the top.
We've all got a responsibility to change the culture in Parliament. If you look at the awful things that were said about Angela Rayner, the rank sexism and misogyny, and it's not just Angela Rayner, there are too many examples, too many women have experienced that same sexism and misogyny. We've all got a responsibility. That requires culture change, and culture change has to be led from and modelled from the top.
There we are, that was Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer there. Well, figures show the number of sex crimes logged by police in England and Wales has hit another record, and there were substantial increases as lockdown restrictions eased. There were over 180,000 sexual offences recorded in a 12-month period to December 2021, which was a 22% increase on 2020. The Office for National Statistics said the latest figures may reflect a number of factors, including the impact of high-profile incidents and campaigns, as well as a potential increase in the number of victims. It comes as separate figures showed the proportion of suspects being taken to court has fallen to a new record low and remains the lowest for rape cases. Staff at a school in South London are striking after the decision to cancel a visit from author Simon James Green. Green had been invited to the John Fisher School in Croydon as part of World Book Day last month to talk about his novel Noah Can't Even, which features a gay character. The Southwark Archdiocese, which oversees the school, recommended school leaders cancel the visit, saying the book is not permissible in a Catholic school. Well, the diocese also sacked several governors of the school who wanted the visit to go ahead. Simon James Green, who is gay, today praised striking teachers for standing up for LGBT students. Well, the National Education Union has said a settlement to the dispute would be expected to include the reinstatement of the governors and to allow the author's visit. New research has revealed that hundreds of thousands of Londoners are to be pushed into paying the higher rate of income tax. Soaring inflation and the decision by the Chancellor to freeze the threshold for paying this levy means 370,000 people in London will be paying the higher income tax rate by 2025 to 26. Well, Liberal Democrat leader Ed Davey, who commissioned the research, called the rise stealth taxes, as it showed nearly 4 in 10 of those facing the 40p rate in the UK are in London and the South East. However, the government defended the threshold freezes, with Treasury Minister Lucy Fraser stating the UK has a highly progressive tax system. Well, climate activists today took over petrol pumps and blocked forecourts at 2 service stations on the M25. Early this morning, the Just Stop Oil group broke display glass and covered them in spray paint at pumps at Cobham services in Surrey and Clackett Lane services in Kent. They also glued themselves to pumps, signs and the top of a lorry. The group are calling for the end to new oil and gas projects in the UK. Well, Justice Secretary Dominic Raab called today's behaviour by the environmental group outrageous. Surrey police said more than 20 people have been arrested. Time for a few sports stories in the capital now. West Ham will welcome Eintracht Frankfurt to Stratford tonight in their Europa League semi-final first leg in what will be the club's biggest ever game at the London Stadium and the Hammers' most important fixture in their recent history. Well, West Ham boss David Moyes says his team must embrace the nerves ahead of kick-off.
I think the nervous side of it, I think, is really important. I think it's good to be nervous. I think it makes you realise the level of the game. But you want the players to play with confidence, and you want them to, to do a lot of things naturally in the game. But I think nerves are really important for the players to understand the level we're at. And look, it's a great game. We're hugely excited by it. The thrill of being in Europe last year was great, qualifying. If you had said to us at the end of May last year you're going to be in the semi-final of the Europa League with a chance of getting to the final, I think we'd have all said, you're joking, So let's be fair, we're in a really good place, and I think we're worthy of it.
Ben Stokes has been named the new England Test captain, taking over from Joe Root, who quit earlier this month after 5 years and a record 64 games in the job. All-rounder Stokes said he is honoured to be given the chance to lead the England Test team, calling the role a privilege. The 30-year-old has scored over 5,000 runs and taken 174 wickets in 79 tests. His first match as permanent England captain will be against world champions New Zealand at Lord's on the 2nd of June. Time for a look at the weather now. Well, this evening remains mild with temperatures around 7 degrees overnight. Tomorrow morning is much of the same with light cloud and a gentle breeze, though hopefully some sunny intervals should be coming through. Looking ahead, the start of the weekend sees highs of 17 degrees. However, on Sunday, the cloud cover comes back and it's back down to 14 degrees, hiding that sun. So if you're doing anything outdoorsy, Saturday looks like it's the day for it. Time for a quick break now, but still to come tonight. London Live's paper reviewer Matt Withers will be here to run us through the stories making headlines in this week's local papers, including a Mayfair hotel with a troubling hygiene rating and anger at Earth Day antics in Finsbury Park.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute, That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to London Live News. Time now for a look at the stories making headlines in the local newspapers. Well, London Live's paper reviewer Matt Withers is here with us today. Let's start with this. So Westminster's Partygate has had implications for one London hospital.
Yeah, this is a story in the Ham and High. Headline, staff work tirelessly. Whittington praises staff after misleading picture. And what has happened here is that Whittington Hospital has defended itself, not that it needs to, because somebody had placed a picture on Twitter showing members of staff there with pizza. And the implication being that they may have been breaking lockdown, or somebody put, how is this any different to cake at the office? And they put this picture up. It was shared widely by people believing that this to be a breach of the lockdown restrictions. As Ham and High, who originally posted the picture, said, the picture predated lockdown. And they said that the date was cropped out of the picture along with much else. And they say that they've decided not to give publicity to the person who posted this, which I won't either, other than say that it's quite a prominent Conservative commentator who has a very large social media following, the implication being that people shouldn't criticise Boris Johnson when other people were breaking these rules, when in fact nothing like this happened. Whittington Health NHS Trust said, this photograph features our staff and was taken in March 2020 before the law prevented social gatherings, so no rules are being broken here. Our staff worked tirelessly during the pandemic and followed all guidance. To suggest otherwise is misleading and does not represent reality. And in fact, there's quite a few people reacting to this on Twitter said it's actually defamatory as well.
Well, it is, you know, it's quite upsetting in a way, because not only were the staff, you know, certainly not slacking, you know, Whittington Health actually faced a very tough time during the pandemic, as many hospitals did.
Yeah, they did. In fact, recently the Chief Executive, Siobhan Harrington, wrote to staff to mark the second anniversary, reflecting on it and talking about how difficult it was for those colleagues who were redeployed into often new and unfamiliar areas and roles, and how unsettling it was for people who, staff themselves, who were clinically extremely vulnerable and forced to endure unrelenting self-isolation. They really had quite a torrid time and came out of it very well. So I actually say, rightly, it was very upsetting for any suggestion that they were partying while other people were suffering.
Absolutely. Well, good to clear that up then in that article. Let's move on. So just under a week ago today, it was Earth Day, which, you know, is an annual event to demonstrate support for environmental protection. But there's been some anger over Earth Day actions in Finsbury Park.
Yeah, this is the front page of today's Islington Gazette, and it's, a very ill-timed, some may suggest, intervention by Haringey Council. They've been called out for, it says here, relocating 200 trees at Finsbury Park on Earth Day. Friends of Finsbury Park planted these trees, they say, in agreement with park staff around one play space there. Haringey Council haven't said why they've moved them, although the Friends have their suspicions that it may be something to do with the fact that the area will be used by the Wireless Festival later this year. They said that last Thursday night they received a formal reply saying that a mistake had been made and they shouldn't be planted there. They met staff on the Friday, which was Earth Day, and went through the concerns. They said it was manageable and there was no requirement for those 200 trees to be moved. Asked for an urgent meeting, but at 4 o'clock that day, within hours of that meeting, all of the trees were ripped out of the ground, the phrase they use here, and that the Friends say they were already sprouting and now will likely die. They say it's hard to engage the council. They talk of planting many more trees when staff are ripping them out. So there seems to be a huge amount of confusion here that's not at all cleared up as to why these trees suddenly had to be moved. But it seems a very strange move to make on this particular day.
Absolutely. And have the council, Haringey Council, isn't it, have they said anything?
Yes, they say following consultation and correspondence, the council took the decision to relocate these 200 trees to a nursery in the park on an interim basis. And we've offered the Friends a meeting to discuss a suitable new location for them. They also say we'd like to reassure our residents that we would never just destroy our trees, and this has nothing to do with the major events in the park this summer, which would seem to address the idea that it was to do with this festival.
Right. OK, well, let's move on from Finsbury Park to Mayfair. Now, when you think of Mayfair, you think of class, you think of luxury, yet this one hotel is really exhibiting quite the opposite of that.
Yes, it's a hardy perennial of the local papers to have places that receive 1 star for hygiene, but it usually tends to be a kind of quite grotty kebab shop that's got mice running amok. But not here. This is a Michelin-starred Mayfair hotel, and it's been given a hygiene rating of just 1 after an inspector found its scallop paperwork wasn't in order, which is incredibly unusual, one would suggest. This is the St James Hotel and Club, which is in Park Place. It was also penalised for allegedly failing to keep documents on its pheasant and foie gras dishes. The hotel said it's made the appropriate changes and is waiting to be inspected again. But yeah, highly unusual reasons to give a place 1 star, which of course they will have to display outside the premises.
Yeah, I mean, I never keep my foie gras paperwork up to date. I don't know about you, Matt. Well, has the hotel said anything in response to this now? You know, are they going to be inspected again?
Yes. What the manager, Anjana Panja, said is, we are a Michelin star restaurant. I can say with pride we have had a food hygiene rating of 4 for 14 years. The reason why the new inspector has given us a rating of 1 is that we were coming out of the pandemic, which is not actually what the inspector said the reasons for giving them the 1 star was.
Right, OK. Well, let's move on then to finally. We often have the wackiest stories on this segment, and this one is no exception. A Londoner who's gone to extreme lengths to kind of get around some landlord rules.
Yes, this is on the My London site. Bexley woman marries pet cat in desperate attempt to stop landlords separating them. And it's true. kind of, because you can't technically marry a cat. But this is a woman called Deborah Hodge. She's a 49-year-old from Bexley. She has had a number of problems in the past with landlords threatening her with eviction, which means she's worried about being split up with her cats. That's happened in the past. She's now got a black and white moggy called India, which she's very fond of. And because she has had some difficulties recently, she lost her job as a life coach. She's worried that she might get expelled from her flat. And she doesn't want that to happen. So she has decided to have a marriage ceremony. She said, I have nothing to lose and everything to gain, so I married my cat. I recited vows under the universe that no man will ever tear myself and India apart. Says here, Deborah wore a tuxedo while India donned the bow tie, cape and gold lame for their civil ceremony, which was officiated by a legally ordained friend, worth mentioning again. No legalities involved here. And the newlyweds celebrated with their wedding guests by having a picnic in the sunshine. I should say her own kids weren't there on the day because, as she says, they think that Mummy has lost the plot.
Matt, thank you so much for joining us here on London Live. There you go, a roundup of the local papers with Matt Withers there. Now, to combat the mental health crisis following the pandemic, Thameslink is launching a new initiative offering the younger generation a support network. The railway is strengthening its partnership with Stevenage Football Club, kickstarting their Don't Tackle It Alone campaign. It's encouraging youngsters to make friends and open up about their problems by joining the Premier League Kicks programme, which is run by the club's foundation. Well, Henry has been speaking to a suicide prevention officer and the CEO of the foundation.
We identified from research that basically younger people had a harder time following the pandemic, and we wanted to get more involved in the community, and we've got a strong partnership with Stevenage Football Club anyway, so we thought what better than to join hands with them and to reach out to younger people, encouraging people to come to the Premier League Kicks programme which they run.
So, Joe, let's bring in Joe now. Why did the club want to get on board with this? As Laura said there, you've got a great partnership with Thameslink. So why did you want to get on board in what's become such a massive issue in the last couple of years?
That's key to it. It has become such a massive issue. And it's clear that we learned through the pandemic, through our wider work, that we're so much better at tackling these issues if we work in partnership and we work together to provide, a cohesive level of support to young people, old people, wherever it might be. So this has been a really important development in our partnership with Thameslink, and across the board, it's the town tackling this challenge that we have around mental health.
So, Joe, tell me about the campaign. How are you going to go and get young people talk about their issues rather than bottling up their emotions?
Yeah, so we run our Premier League Kicks programme, which runs on a Friday night in Garden City in Stevenage. We have staff there that provide free sports activities and are just there to really provide a positive outlet for young people. So if you're feeling isolated, feeling lonely, you can go and be with your peers, with others like you that have been through similar challenges that you've been through, and just have that positive experience rather than being isolated. The programme offers a variety of things, not just sport, not just football, but personal development, educational opportunities. We involve music and we have guest speakers down from loads of partner organisations to just show that they're not on their own and that there's loads of people out there willing to support them and help them with whatever it is they're going through.
How hard is it for us to make sure that young people are okay when we don't know what they're going through? How hard is it for them to talk up and speak up about what they're going through?
It's really hard. It's hard for everybody to speak up, but it's a case of providing people with safer spaces to do so. So our stations, we try and make them as welcoming as possible, but they're not the best places to be meeting up and can cause antisocial behaviour. So what we really want to do is open up more spaces where people can meet safely and discuss their mental health. And the more children and young people that are speaking about their mental health, the better. And the academy leads by example by speaking to the young people about what they're going through and how they've overcome things.
You touched upon it there, Laura, the fact that the Thameslink just want to try and help out in the community. I think lots of people might expect something like this, a community project from a football club, but maybe not from Thameslink. But this is part of your mission, isn't it, as well, to help the communities that you also serve?
Absolutely, and we are part of the community, and we need to be giving back as much as we can. So, and we support the academy players. We give them free passes so that they can travel for education and for training purposes. We support them, and in turn, they then can support the community.
And as the head of the foundation at the club, Jo, what interactions, if you've had any, with some of the younger players about mental health? How easy is it for young people to get their stresses out, because they're footballers, but they've got loads of other things going on as well?
Yeah, it's a real challenge, particularly with players in the football club. They go through tremendous pressure, and young players that are in the academy system as well. They've got the same young pressures that young people have around exams, layered on top of the stresses that they have around their playing aspirations. So we use a mental health and wellbeing platform called GoVox to check in with players on a regular basis and give staff the confidence and the skills to be able to provide the support they need, and again, the knowledge to refer, when to refer and how to refer.
There we are. That was Henry there speaking to those working on the Don't Tackle It Alone campaign from Thameslink and the Stevenage Football Club. You're watching London Live News with HELENAWADIA. A reminder of our top story coming up after the break. Plus, from busking on the streets of East London to headlining a show at the Wembley Arena, we'll be speaking to the frontman of ska band The Jewelers.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to London Live News. A reminder of our top story. A man has appeared in court charged with the murders of 4 family members who were stabbed in Bermondsey. Well, Scotland Yard confirmed this morning that a 28-year-old man had been charged. Anthony Baxter has more.
Homicide detectives from the Met Specialist Crime Command, who are leading this investigation, released details this morning of the man charged over the attack, which took place in the early hours of Monday morning. Armed officers were called to a terraced house on Delaford Road in southeast London after reports of a disturbance. The man charged is 28-year-old Joshua Jacks from Minard Road in Hither Green. He's accused of killing 64-year-old Dolly Hill, her partner Denton Burke, and Ms. Hill's daughter and granddaughter, Tanisha and Samantha, who were 45 and 27. Mr. Jacks appeared at Westminster Magistrates this afternoon, where he spoke only to confirm his name, date of birth and address. He was remanded in custody and will next appear at the Old Bailey on Tuesday.
That was Anthony Baxter reporting on those stabbings in Bermondsey. Now, a Conservative Party MP who allegedly watched pornography in the House of Commons chamber could face an independent investigation. The party's chief whip called for the case to be referred to the Parliament's independent complaint scheme, which could lead to the MP being suspended if the complaint is upheld. Well, Defence Secretary Ben Wallace was asked earlier today if he was shocked at the allegations.
Does it shock me? Look, I'm afraid I've done, nearly 15, 17 years in the House of Commons. We've seen over the years everything from, my old office in the House of Commons used to be John Prescott's office, where they had that legendary Christmas party with John Prescott when he was Deputy Prime Minister. I've seen things over decades that I'm afraid no longer shocks me, but I think it shows the problem in the House of Commons is ultimately the overall culture of long hours, bars, and people sometimes under pressure. And after all of that, that can create a toxic mix that leads to all sorts of things. I mean, this is not a unique problem.
Well, Ben Wallace today reiterated that he thought Parliament was a safe place for female MPs, while Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said the Conservative Party should take action now against the MP, stating a culture change has to be led from the top.
If you look at the awful things that were said about Angela Rayner, the rank sexism and misogyny, and it's not just Angela Rayner, there are too many examples, too many women have experienced that same sexism and misogyny. We've all got a responsibility. That requires culture change, and culture change has to be led from and modelled from the top.
Now, time to hear one Londoner's very own Zero to Hero story. Frontman of the now legendary ska and reggae band The Jewelers began his musical career busking on the streets of South and East London. Now he's heading to the OVO Wembley Arena to play the biggest gig of his life. Well, a little earlier, Tyber Cranstoun told me about his start in the music industry and what he's learnt from singing on the streets of the capital.
My dad was a pioneer promoter of ska and reggae back in the 60s and 70s. He met my mum, had kids, and like so many parents, you always relive your youth. So we were brought up listening to ska and reggae. And he had like a sound system in that during the early 60s and 70s. So yeah, he was playing ska and reggae in our house since I was born. And then my brother, we lived in Canterbury at the time, being a cobbled pro-busking sort of high street. My brother, who's a couple of years older than me, took to the streets and started singing ska and reggae and soul music. And yeah, the audience loved him. So he returned home, grabbed his younger brother.
Well, then, of course, as you mentioned there, you started busking, and you also started busking here in the capital. Where in London would you busk, and kind of where were you living at the time?
I've lived in Greenwich. I've done a little bit of busking in Greenwich, been to Covent Garden, but they sort of, you've got like a half-an-hour slot in Covent Garden. So they sort of move you on to ensure that obviously you get a varied amount of buskers. So yeah, it's kind of all over Bromley, Beckenham, sort of mainly the south of London.
Well, let's move on and talk about your band, The Jewelers, and just tell us about the style of music you make. You mentioned your dad there and about ska and reggae.
Yeah. We're really authentic. We take it right back to the 60s and 70s. I mean, like all genres of music, it evolves over time. Each decade, it kind of evolves into something else. But we really do hark back to the 60s and 70s when arguably it was the best time for music in any genre. And certainly for ska and reggae. And the trouble was with it, there was so much good music around at that time. So it kind of got sort of like pushed under the table a little bit. I mean, if you go back to 60s and 70s in rock music, indie music, any kind of genre, it was really, really, it was massive. But in ska and reggae, we didn't really have, there wasn't a hell of a lot going on apart from Bob Marley. Most people can't really name another reggae artist. So, but there were some fantastic artists out there, and I've kind of sort of reached back and emulated those artists. So ours is very much in that sort of, it's very sort of happy, uplifting, mainly, you know, love and kindness and stuff like that. So in the lyrics.
And in the band, of course, is your brother. What's it like playing with family?
Yeah, well, he left a while back, but we're playing Wembley Arena on the 14th of May, and he's making an appearance on there. But I mean, it's trying, testing. I mean, it's like, you know, I do see some people when they go, yeah, I'm close to my siblings. I think when you're singing together as often as we did every single week, it's probably a little bit too much to see your brother. I mean, as much as we love each other and we were very, very close as kids, but as you get older, you kind of get a set way of how you want to do things.
Well, you know, we've got to talk about the Wembley Arena gig. I mean, biggest gig of your life so far, I imagine.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. I went to go and see Whitney Houston there. I've been to go and see Prince there, which is just ridiculous for me to be sitting there thinking now that I'm obviously playing there. And friends of mine keep coming up to me saying, you must be buzzing. I'm like, I'm not sure buzzing's the word. It's like, I'd be buzzing if I was to go and see a gig. But to actually be the performer on the stage, you just hope and pray everything goes well. And because obviously the bigger the gig, the higher the risk that things could potentially go wrong. And the thing is now with social media, everyone films it. So you've always got that in the back of your mind that nothing's going to come crashing down or it's not a windy day or something. But no, I'm starting to look forward to it now as we get nearer to it.
Well, you know, far from busking on the streets of Bromley, you're now, you know, playing the OVO Arena in Wembley. What do you think you've learnt lessons from busking that you can take to the stage to Wembley? Yeah,
without a doubt. I mean, I think I still think busking it takes a lot more guts to get up and busk than it does to stand on a stage. I mean, essentially, you're there and people are in town. They're not coming to watch busking. They've come in to do a bit of shopping or to get away from the kids or whatever it might be. So they're not really prepared to listen to live music. So you have to really win them over. And the weather plays a huge part in it as well. So obviously at a gig, people have come to pay to listen to music, but you're kind of interrupting people's day if you're standing around jumping about, pumping out, amped music. So, yeah, I've without a doubt learned loads from busking. I think it's a general confidence and the ease of being able to talk to people. So in the band, we've got some really confident people, but when I come off the mic and I want them to do a little bit of talking on my behalf so I can catch my breath or something, they majorly struggle, and I'm surprised at that because they're really comfortable. But I think it's because I probably make it look easy because chatting on a microphone as a busker, You have to be able to do that. So from the years of doing that, which is half my life, I'm never, as you can probably hear, lost for words too often. I'm joking, but I do think there is that element of confidence that you just go in there, and I think it's that thing of knowing that most people, if not all, want you to achieve and want to do well. But I think there's always the doubt in your mind that there's people out there that want you to fail, but people don't. In general, they want you to do well and succeed. And standing on a high street, I'm living proof of that, because obviously we took it to another level. I think from standing on a high street, you certainly learn your confidence, and also how to project your voice. If you've got a cold or you cough or something, a lot of singers go, I need to rest my voice. But in actual fact, they can probably do it. They just got to find that next level.
Well, there we are. The Jewelers will be playing the OVO Wembley Arena on Saturday, the 14th of May. Time for a break now, but still to come.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to the final part of London Live News. Now, London author Lizzie Barber is releasing her second book exploring friendships, manipulation, desire and seduction set in the backdrop of the Tuscan sun. Out of Her Depth follows the story of Rachel, who is having an idyllic time when something goes terribly wrong. Well, Tanya has been speaking to Lizzie about the story and her experience in the food industry in London, which inspired the book.
When I was 18, I lived in Florence, and it was this kind of perfect moment in between leaving school and starting university where, you kind of think that you're an adult, but you're obviously so completely naive. And so I had this wonderful summer, kind of very decadent summer, nothing as dark as what happens in the book, where we spent kind of 3 hours in the morning learning Italian and then kind of let loose into the city of Florence for the afternoon. And we'd spend the weekends traveling to various parts of Italy on the train. We'd go down to Cinque Terre, which features in the book as well. So I'd always had that in the back of my mind, this kind of really glorious experience. And then when I started writing, it was always in the back of my mind. And I always thought that Florence, because it is so beautiful and so dark as well. I mean, they even had their own serial killer in the 80s. I always thought it would make the perfect setting for a thriller. And then I think that it was always kind of almost a composite of different experiences. So there was my own experience there. I was also very inspired by The Talented Mr. Ripley and loved that idea of toxic friendship and kind of obsessive friendship, but wanted to look at it through a female lens. And then the last sort of very slight influence was I was actually in Florence at a similar time to Amanda Knox, and she was down in Perugia. And this idea of this kind of beautiful experience going horribly wrong. So I think all of those kind of facets came together and inspired into what turned out to be Out of Her Depth.
So food being a key theme within the book, tell us a little bit about what you do during your day job as well, working in restaurant here in London, and does that feed into or inspire your work when it comes to being an author?
I think it's almost sort of subliminal in a way. So for the last 11 years, I have worked in the restaurant business with my brother. We have a restaurant group called the Hush Collection, which has 3 very different restaurant brands. We've always been incredibly close and we've always shared a love of food. It helps that my husband is a food writer. So, I mean, I hate the term foodie, but we are both very food oriented. So we spend a lot of time in restaurants, in our restaurants, in other restaurants. And I think that I'm really interested in the way that food in books is more than just a kind of description. It can tell you a lot about characters. It can tell you a lot about locations and settings. So for me, obviously, I had the food of Italy to kind of inspire the setting and give kind of a deeper sense of the setting of Italy. And then there's also the interplay of class between Rachel, who's my sort of working class, quite kind of normal background, and Diana, who's this very extravagant South Londoner, and how Diana will just flippantly order a kind of bottle of Dom Perignon without even caring about the price, and Rachel is kind of sitting there ordering a starter very nervously and then looking aghast when they have to split the bill.
Tell me what you think about London's food scene. How do you rate it? I mean, in comparison to somewhere like Italy, if anyone's been lucky enough to go, I think perhaps a few of the restaurants in London will give us, Italian restaurants, will give us a taste of what it's like. But really, the food out there is something else. But what do you think about London food?
As I've said, I've been in the industry 11 years now, and it has just kind of shifted seismically in that time. I mean, we were 10 years ago, we were embarrassed of the London food scene. You know, we would never rate it with somewhere like Paris or New York. But I think it's such an exciting time now to be in the industry because there are so many independents popping up, so many people taking risks. I mean, I'm a kind of diehard East London foodie, and so I spend a lot of time going out to Hackney and Clapton and Shoreditch. And I think even the Italian food scene there, I mean, there are some fantastic places like Brawn, like Ombra, Officina 00. I think that they are bringing us a sense of kind of authenticity and beautiful, delicate food that we maybe wouldn't have got.
There we are. Out of Her Depth by Lizzie Barber is out today. Now, stars were out on the red carpet in Leicester Square last night to attend the world premiere of Downton Abbey: A New Era. The highly anticipated cinematic return has been long awaited after being cancelled twice because of the COVID pandemic, and will see the beloved characters go on a grand journey to the south of France to uncover a mystery. Well, here's a glimpse of what the stars said on the red carpet last night ahead of its release tomorrow.
I was been raised for this second outing by literally the canvas is wider and broader. Not only are we having a movie within the movie, which is a nice bit of, but also we travelled to France and to the south of France, and it's a beautiful place to be. The palette of colour. I think the key Downton ingredients that Julian sprinkles over every recipe are big laughs, some nice poignant moments, and rattling good yarns that you pat yourself on the back as an audience, thinking I was there ahead of them.
I think for me, Downton is all about family and. Also, even the workplace becomes like a family between upstairs and downstairs, and yeah, it feels like this is a perfect way to get back to the cinema to visit old friends and family, and it feels like a hug from those that you love.
I think there's a lot of anticipation about it because of what we've all been through for the last couple of years, really. I mean, when you think it's probably nearly 3 years since the first film came out, and then we've been through the pandemic and lockdown, and hopefully the expectation's high because people really want to sort of enjoy themselves more, particularly with the current political climate. So, I think the bar is higher, the expectations are higher, and hopefully the rewards are higher as well.
Well, the house is in it. We have a wedding. We have other major events that happen. We have a lot of love. The family are really pulling it out of the bag. There's surprises. We have surprises. Mr. Molesley surprises himself and the rest of us. And then something really wonderful. Julian does this genius thing where he turns the house upside down in terms of upstairs and downstairs.
I think because a movie production is coming into Downton, it kind of makes it even more cinematic in a way. So it does feel like the bar has been pushed a little higher. And I think Simon Curtis, our director, did such a beautiful job. It looks incredible. It's just a real adventure. And this, crew invading the house is something very new for audiences.
Well, it's shot so beautifully. There's these amazing set pieces, and it's really cinematic. So I really loved it. I think you can really see this elevation. And the last film, watching it with other people, laughing, and people were really audible. Like, it was so exciting, and I like that. I like this communal experience, and I think people will really enjoy watching it with other people.
I think this second film feels really cinematic. It feels like it's made for the cinema. It's taken all of the charm and the beauty of Downton Abbey and kind of elevated that even more. It's really nice to see the characters out of context in the south of France. And I think there's a real challenge to the kind of class system when Hollywood comes to Downton, because it's, it's suddenly that they don't rule the roost anymore, and Hollywood doesn't care, who's in charge. So that's a really, that provides a lot of funny moments.
What they can expect from the film is just a moment away from all that's going on, and hopefully a reprieve, so they can sit there with a lot of other people in a dark room and look at this sort of fantasy of what life was like. It's done to be truly entertaining, and I hope it is.
The charm of Downton, if I'm allowed to say that, is the characters. The characters are mainly very decent people, and they're doing their best. And of course they have different expectations of life, and they've been given different starts and so on and so forth. But I don't think that matters. I think the point is they're all doing their best. And I think that feels very attractive. It does to me anyway. And I think that's what attracts the audience.
Downton Abbey, A New Era is released in UK cinemas tomorrow. Time for a final check on the weather now. Well, this evening remains mild with temperatures